is an incorrect statement. There's no such thing as the daughters of ISIS. Right? That's very touching. When they had these fellas who formed these chapters after Freemasonry became boring after the first 3 degrees. And then they started adding honorary degrees and men were writing up their own degrees. They were trying to become something. The influence of the shrine, which links to the daughters of Isis and sisters in the line, has to do with Islam, first of all, and started way back in Arabia, a long time before Freemasonry was ever even founded. They married way up in Algiers, is where they married, where Freemasons were in Algiers at a dinner and came in contact with the Hashima, which is a certain sect of men called the Assassins. They were Shriners, but they didn't use the word shrine. When they brought this into America, you know what it became? It became the sheriff's department. The word sharif and the word sheriff is the exact same word. And that's why the sheriff is responsible for controlling law outside of the city, out in the county, where they have people policing the city. You follow what I'm saying? And enshrining them, what happened is, in the city of Mecca, which is the real name, there's no such place as Mecca, and the word Mecca is not even in the Quran, in Arabic, it's in the translations. But the city of Mecca was ruled by a family called the Quraysh, who take their descendancy all the way back to Abraham, and back to a tribe of people called Ben Canaan, which is the son of Enos in Genesis. If you look in the Bible, you can see the word Canaan is the exact same word in Arabic, Canaan, but it's not to be mistaken with Canaan. Arabically said, Canaan sounds a lot like Canaan, and they're two different tribes, right? But they take their family, and they lived in that area according to Islamic teachings. Geographically, they're wrong. Geographically, Zemzem is not in Mecca, not based on the Tanakh or the Torah. Geographically, Hagar and Ishmael were nowhere near Saudi Arabia, not when you look in the Torah and geographically trace out where these cities were. As a person who went to school there and lived there and was born there, most people are being deceived. We'll get to that. So what happened is they had to protect people coming into that city. That city was like, let's say, Atlanta. It was a center of trade and wealth. That city called Becca. That wasn't even the original name. It was called El Qum. That was the original name. And so what happens is bandits used to wait outside because they knew that the city being called Mecca was a city of trade, and it sat way out in the middle of the desert here. So they would circle the city and set up tents, and they would wait for tribes of people coming in with caravans with spices and oils and stuff, and they would rob them before they got to what's called Mecca. This was costing the family of the Quraysh a lot of problems. So what they did is one of the great uncles called Atum-Re of the Prophet Muhammad got together with a bunch of family members in their village called the Quraysh, which sits up from the Kaaba, and they put together a special band of men. And these men said they would become the protectors and the defenders of those pilgrims coming to that city. It wasn't Mecca like today where it's making Hajj or nothing like that. This was going there for trade like they're doing today. Jeddah in Saudi Arabia has now become a city of nothing but trade. Nothing religious about going to Jeddah. And Jeddah is only 45 miles away from Mecca, which is called the holy city. So what they did is they had these men, and what they did is they cloaked themselves in black. They wore all black jalaba, they wore a red sash, they wore a black imma or turban, and a black face veil like Hamza. And they lived in black tents and lived all outside of the holy city to protect people trying to come in. And if they caught a person stealing, they cut off their hand. If a person raped or killed somebody, they cut off their head. The shriners back then became the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in one. But they were protecting the wealth of that city. You follow? Now this went on for years, and the names changed. Eventually they became known as the Mutasawwif. That means Sufis. They thought they were mystics or the fakir. When they use the word fakir, it means to be poor, to be without wealth, or as we say, penniless. So that term passed over. You follow that? Being penniless, who lived out in the deserts under the tents of Kedar. Kedar means black, Hebrew word, and it refers to Ishmael's second son. Ishmael was the first son of Abraham, or Ibrahim, or whatever language you chose. And his second son was called Kedar. And that's why in Songs of Solomon they say, I'm black but comely, O you daughters of Jerusalem, like the curtains of Solomon and the tents of Kedar. You follow that? So the curtains of Solomon's temple were black on the inside in remembrance of the tribes of Kedar who protected all of the other tribes. As it passed down through history, these men broke off into groups and broke off into sects and moved into different cities where there were holy men called Sufis and holy shrines or qubbas. The word for shrine in Arabic is qubba. That means a place where a person is buried, a holy man, a shayukh, or they have many different names we use for them. And this is where their bodies were, and they believed that these men were saintly and had powers. The most powerful saint in present day shrinery is called Qadir. And his funeral, which his name is Sheikh Qadir, his funeral is reenacted in every shrine and temple. The whole ritual, the coffin, all that is based on one man's death. Especially Negro shriners who have never been in the East, never lived in the East, don't know the history. They only got what some Caucasian comedians gave them, who wasn't even properly initiated themselves. So this family tribe, therefore, I had to draw my mind, circular outsides of Mecca and protected these people for years. Eventually they started moving over to other cities. When Ali, radiallahu anhu, which was the son of Abu Talib, and in other words, the great grandson of that same man who founded, when Ali, who was known for wearing black like Muhammad, and Fatima married certain people from other tribes who could not be in the shrine because they were not blood related, like Abu Bakr, Sadiq and them, became angry. And so they wanted Muhammad to marry Abu Bakr's daughter, but she was too young. Her name was Aisha. She was still a baby. So in order to get into the family of Muhammad, they actually gave their daughter to him when she was only 9 years old, just to get her in the bloodline in hopes that she would have a baby and thus have a child by Muhammad and thus the bloodline of the other tribe, Abu Bakr's tribe, and that would be in the family line. Unfortunately, Aisha wasn't able to have children and never had children. So they had to come up with another plan, and the plan was to kill Fatima and Ali, Hassan and Hussein and their whole family, to eliminate them so that they could just take over. And this is how come you have the Sunni sect of Muslims saying that the first Khalifa is rightfully Abu Bakr, when the history of Islam and Ahlul Bayt of the Quran makes it very clear that the rightful successor should be Shia. So if you looked at astronomy from the Islamic standpoint of view, which they say they belong to, it takes you back to the Shiite sect. But most Muslims don't have any knowledge of the history of Shiite because the invaders of America were Sunni. So when they look to find shrinedom in Islam, they get lost because they don't know nothing about the Shiite doctrine. The Shiites' migration, this is where Egypt comes in. The Shiites' migration is when Fatima and them were being massacred, because Fatima died 6 months after her father, who died in the year 632, because they tried to kill her. Ali and his sons were killed. Well, Ali's two sons, Hassan and Hussein, was killed. Hussein died at birth. And then they migrated. His name was Yaqub, the son, migrated. They made it out of Arabia, all the way up to Hijaz, being chased by the Abbasides, all the way up into Qahira, called Cairo. And there they built a mosque. The university that I attended, Al-Azhar in Cairo, is where Fatima's family stopped, and Yaqub and them. Yaqub had like buku sons. So some went towards Persia and learned to speak Farsi and picked up the Farsi script, and they were trying to preserve the Quran because the Sunnis were trying to introduce a new Quran by a man called Musallim, claiming that his name was Muslim before Muhammad was born, because his name Musallim means Muslim, and he had written a Quran, and his Quran was in poetry. So they had to declare in Muhammad's Quran that poetry was forbidden. But by the time Muhammad passed and they had started killing all the men who had remembered the Quran, the Qur'an they called them, they had to go from memory, the same thing like the rabbis had to do. They had to go from memory after they came out of Babylon. So the original Quran was lost except for what you memorized. You follow? And so certain surahs of the Quran, the surahs, were forgotten. Certain ones identified with how Muhammad was really a Christian because of who he was taught by, so they threw those away like the Nicene Council. And they had to borrow certain surah from Musallima, but that meant what? They had to kill Musallima. And killing Musallima, you now have poetry. Now, a Muslim will tell you there's no poetry in the Quran. But poetry is usually defined by words that end in rhymes or rhythm, right? I'm going to recite some Quran in Arabic, and I want you to hear whether or not this is poetry or not. Ready? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسوس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. You hear everything is ending in, but in the Quran, poetry is forbidden. So it was obvious that certain books from the poem Musallima ended up inside the Quran anyway. It had to be mathematically made. But back to the point. They were trying to preserve the Quran, so these other tribe members were trying to kill them. Al-Abbas's father had died. Abu Matalib, who was the protector of the Shriners, was dead. You follow that? Hamza, who was the head of the Shriners, the one who came in and saved Muhammad's life, was already dead. So they had to leave Mecca, as they call it, and they got chased up into Cairo. When they got to Cairo, they met up with a tribe of Nubians called Bija, or Biga, some call them Athara, right? And they're called the Fuzzy Wuzzies. And Fatima's family moved in with them, and they protected them. And they lived in the cities where Mary and Joseph and Jesus was at, all down through Nubia. And they protected the family there and protected the Quran. Meanwhile, I have to jump again, Ali and them went to Persia and made a new translation of the Quran, and it was in a city called Kufa. So the translation was put into a language called Kufic or Kufi. And it looked much like Hebrew upside down box letters. Meanwhile, Bilal from Habashia or Ethiopia, him and Omar, another relative of the Prophet Muhammad, migrated across Africa and went up into Maghribi. Al-Maghribi is a word meaning the West or Morocco. With me? And when they got to Morocco, they took the original Quran, the parts that they had, and translated it into another script called Maghribi. A little more complicated, a little different. But the Moroccan script is different from the Farsi script and is different from the Kufic script. None of the Qurans that Muslims are reading today are in the original script of the Quran. They're either reading the Moroccan script, the Persian script, or Kufic, and very few people can read Kufic because it's more like Old English. So that said, they chased them up into Egypt, and there they got exposed to the teachings of Asit, Asahu, and Harun. And because Muhammad's last wife, her name was Miriam, they call her in Islam Miriam the Qibti, or Miriam the Egyptian, who had a son named Ibrahim who died at birth. They had family to meet them when they got there. And these people exposed them to the ancient Egyptian doctrine. This is how the daughters of Isis, which is a Greek way of saying acid, got into Shrinendom. You follow? It goes way back before what people in America think they know about Shrinendom. What they have today in American Shrinendom is not Shrinendom. It's something that they put together. Some Arabs in Algiers was having a party. Remember, they didn't have videotapes. They didn't have, like we have cinemas. So people did more plays to express themselves, to tell stories of Shakespeare. They did it by telling his book, enacting it. So Muslims used to do the same thing. They would enact the stories of the battles of Badr and the conquering of this village. And so in certain parties, rich sultans or rich, men would have actors come and act out what the rituals. And one of the rituals they saw acted out was the story of Aisha in the desert, when she had her hymen broken by riding a camel, and how she deceived the adopted son of Muhammad, and how Fatima and Ali and them didn't believe that really happened. And their whole ritual is reacted in the temple today, but they don't even know what it means. They don't know where it came from. They don't know what the lynching is about. They don't know none of the rituals. They lost sight of the rituals. As the daughters of Isis, you might have known by reading it. When you get to the handbook, they have the name Hess. There's no such thing. It's a mispronunciation. There's no such lady Hess. These are things that must be corrected because shrining them is ours. Always was ours. And in our family line, all the way back to Abraham. And what's being done now is the same thing that's always being done. The Negro, what I call Afro Shriners, are being fed a doctrine that was really taken for joy, for fun. But inside that ritual, there were certain items that were serious because they belonged to Abdul Qadir's sect of Sufis. So when Abdul Qadir died, shrining them mourned his death. And they enacted a ritual in New York, in like a funeral service for him. And if you've ever been into a shrine in the temple, the whole thing is nothing but a funeral ritual of that one man, but they don't know it. Everybody gets deeper in that when you know real shrining. And it goes into the tribes, the families that they were protecting, the holy men, and the holy shrine. And the ultimate purpose of shrining them was to protect Isa el-Messiah from Dib el-Messiah. Isa el-Messiah is the Arabic way of saying Jesus the Messiah. Dib the Messiah is a way in Arabic of saying the Antichrist. Real shriners' purpose was, other than most people on earth who are waiting for Jesus to come to save them, there's always been mentioned throughout the Tanakh or the Torah or the Quran a heavenly host, a group of men or angelic beings that was here to protect the Heavenly Father. They call them God's army or the heavenly host. Shriners are supposed to be God's army. We are supposed to be here to make sure that Jesus has a smooth transition from wherever he's coming from, and I'll get to that. When he arrives, when his mother gives birth, we are supposed to be there the same way we were 2,000 years ago when Jesus was born in the manger and we shriners came as the wise men of the east, the Magi. Magus, Persian word for those who acknowledge the light of the sun. Because Magus just means sun worship. And the sun they're talking about is the deity of Ra, which Hagar called on in the Bible as El Roy when she became afraid, the god Ra. Our job as shriners is to become the protectors, to find out where Mary, I'm using the name of the past, where Mary is at, when she's pregnant, and when she is about to deliver, because there's two Marys giving birth in your Bible. One Mary gave birth 2,000 years ago in a manger in the presence of the wise men and was told to take her son and go to Egypt because God knew she'd be safe there. The same way God told Jacob go to, and told Abraham go to, and told Isaac go to, because God says in Amos, that's where I come from. And you'll find God came from Egypt in the Bible, the book of Revelation chapter 3 verse 14, where it says the Amen, the faithful, the true, right, who's there to witness the creation of your God. It says it in the Bible. But anyway, the second birth of Mary comes in Revelation chapter 12. We talked about this before, but I guess I'll do over. And this woman, they say, is impregnated with a baby, waiting to give birth, and the dragon is waiting for her to deliver, so he may devour her child. But this woman is in the wilderness under a fig tree. And we find that same story in the Quran. The Mary of the Quran did not give birth while in a manger in the town of Bethlehem, but rather she gave it in the wilderness under a tree. Because the Quran is a book of prophecy after the Messiah Jesus, it is talking about the coming Jesus, not the Jesus that is already passed. So of course, the story in the Quran 19 about the birth of Jesus and Revelations 12 is going to be the same story. Because both of those happened after Jesus, because the book of Revelation was revealed to John, son of Zebedee, in the year 96 to 98 while he was in the Isle of Patmos. And this was 98 years after Isa and Messiah had went on or passed on. So this was now talking about the Messiah to come. The much confusion, intentional confusion, has been introduced into the Bible so that man will not be ready for that great day that mentions in the book of Malachi, great and dreadful day of the Lord. You with me? For Australia's real purpose is the heavenly host, the soldiers of God. And we're supposed to be preparing ourselves for the coming of the Messiah. And we know that according to that same book of Revelation chapter 12, that the devil has a host of angelic beings that warred against Michael and have been cast to earth and could not get back in heaven anymore. That's what it says in Revelation 12. So we must acknowledge that if you believe in the Bible or accept the Bible or confirm it, whatever way you got it, that the devil's heavenly host is walking on earth with us. Now, somebody might want to say, right, that they are the white people. Very convenient. The devil don't have no race. The devil don't come in colors and shades. The devil has a purpose. You know what I mean? The devil has a reason. And that reason is to disrupt the natural order. And that means after hardship comes ease. That's also a Bible and a Quranic book. Man has lived through the hardship of Matthew 24. Right? Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, pestilence, all of these diseases, all of the famines and the floods and the prophecies and people going crazy and kids shooting kids, that it was possible they even be able to fool the scientists, the elite. But for the world's sake, they can't. Because God has sped up time. It says in the Bible, He sped up time. Otherwise, we'd be able to be tricked. We are supposed to be preparing for the birth of this Messiah. The Quran acknowledges him in Arabic as El-Messiah. The Jews call him Mashiach. Persians call him Messiah. Christians call him Christos. Whatever name you call on, there is a being coming to this world. Coming from another world. If you want to say that's heaven, that's your business. You want to call it Jannah, that's your business. Whatever language you chose, because all the languages speaking after Babylon are not the original language. You with that? Whether you read the Bible in Hebrew, the Quran in Arabic, and the New Testament in Greek, because it's after Babylon, when all the tongues have been confused, then you're not reading in the language of God anyway. You understand what I'm saying? Because Hebrew came in Genesis chapter 13. And if Hebrew came out in Genesis chapter 13, then Hebrew was after the Babylon story. After the so-called God Adonai came down, as they say, to earth to confound the tongues of man. So Torah, Tanakh, and Hebrew is not the original language of God. And you want to find God's language, you have to go back again to Revelation chapter 3 verse 14. But in the book of Revelations chapter 3 verse 14, it literally tells you the name of the God that witnessed the creation of the God of the Torah. They call him the Amma. They call him Pe-Omim in Greek. It has a definite article, the Amma. The faithful, the true witness. And they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about the God that watched the birth and creation of the God Jehovah. You say, watch the birth and creation of the God Jehovah? Well, yes. Jehovah had a gradual creation in it tonight. Because if you open the Bible to Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, you get the name Elohim first. You see that? It says Rashish. Barashish, or as from the head of things. Barra, created, Elohim, and Shemarim, that means the earth. You understand? But the name in here is Elohim, the plural for deities. As you move down to Genesis 24th verse, it becomes Yahweh Elohim, the Lord God. Went from God infinite to the Lord God. And then when you get further, it just becomes, then man becomes the call on the name of Jehovah by the time you get to Genesis 4. So God, in a sense, had a form of a metamorphosis. He went from Elohim, or God, in Genesis, to the Lord God, and to just the Lord. And then after that, he became many different things, Almighty, Shaddai, and a whole bunch of different attributes. It came from different people's cultures and can be traced to different languages. So there's a metamorphosis of God. So the real name of God is Amun in the Bible. Amun-Ra, ancient Egyptian deity. And there's multiple stories on how Amun-Ra came into existence, which we can get into it another time. Whether we call him Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Elohim, Adonai, Shaddai, Ulu, God, Dios, however we cut the cake, it's still end up having evil. You with me? So our job in this day and time is to prepare for the coming of the real Messiah. The dreadful day of the Lord, as spoken of in the book of Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament. Or Malachi means in Hebrew is Malachia. That means my angel. Look for my angel to come. And when my angel comes, you'll know the dreadful day of the Lord is coming. And he said he's coming like what? They call him in the Bible the Son of Righteousness. Shemarai Tasadok. The Son of Righteousness. S-U-N is right in there. Not S-O-N, which is Baal or Ben. In Malachi, it said, watch for the Son, S-U-N, of Righteousness. And the Son is going to bring healing. You know where you're at right now? You're in a day of scorching heat, where tropical climates have moved into the Western world, where the sun is starting to burn people up, where the purification taking place. These are prophecies being fulfilled. We're coming at that time when that Messiah will be born. It's a great and a dreadful day for those who are not obedient. It's called the great and dreadful day of the Lord. But Shriners, real ones, who go all the way back past the playground they play in America, all the way are preparing for it. They have a brotherhood, Council of Nine. They meet every 9 years. And we meet in different countries. All of us speak Arabic. You can't be a Shriner and not speak Arabic. All of us know the secrets. The passwords are not the ones being given out today. So that's all a big hoax for what was lost for many years. And they waited for the Quran to complete the whole cycle of the planet. A 25,000-year cycle. Quran is only 1,400 years old. How did it take a 25,000-year cycle and be 1,400 years old? Because the Quran is nothing but the Torah. Nothing but the New Testament. Everything it had, because the people of it were lost. You're the lost tribe of people, scattered all over the world. Forgot who you are, what your purpose was. You don't even know your bloodline. You don't know your family. You don't know your religious traditions or customs. You just feed off anything anybody gives you that sounds esoteric, spooky, or nice. But you do have a way. The man had a way to protect us at night. The man had a way of communicating. From tribe to tribe, we met in the valleys and we protected the pilgrims when they came in. And we're supposed to be here protecting the pilgrim, the lonely pilgrim when he comes. Protecting him against, as Revelation 12 says, against the dragos. And they use in Greek, in this case, dragon. But later on they say, what do they call that dragon? That old devil called Satan, right? They give you all his attributes there to let you know who we are going to be fighting against. And they don't give you the impression that he's one man or one horned creature with a pitchfork. Because they tell you that Satan or his dragon had a host of angels fighting against Michael, or Michael, God's angel. There was war in heaven in those days. It said that fight didn't take place on earth. And the thing about it, it doesn't say heaven like the place, it says up there. Tama-Re in Hebrew means up there. It was a fight that took place in the sky. Which sounds very spooky. The United States government fights in the sky right now itself. 90% of the war fought in Iraq was fought with planes shooting from the sky. Nothing spooky. But this war will be fought on earth. The war that they call it Armageddon, which is often mistranslated as Armageddon. Armageddon is where the bloodshed is taking place right now in Israel, while people who don't belong there are fighting with our land, our original home as ancient Israelites. You say, well, you said we're Israelites. We're Israelites. We're Israelites. We're ancient Egyptians. We are a scattered people. And every place we went, people gave us a different name. And every place we went, we found other religious philosophies and doctrines that we cling to. Now we call ourselves Christians, Muslims, Hebrews, Rastafarians, 5%ers, and this era passed. And then we call ourselves something else unless we find our way home. You hear me? So when you ask about shrine, it's a very touchy subject. As you know, as also an answer, y'all was shrining since 1970, you know what I mean? There's much things you read, the exact same thing I was teaching all the time. It just was not ready to come surface. People were not ready for that yet. So we had to give people what they want. So they learned to want what we had to give. I spent years addressing every philosophy, every doctrine, every religion, every denomination I could. Try to make things clear to people that I was talking today, in fact, to my daughter Hagen. I said, isn't it strange that Muslims think that they're fighting Christendom and they're only fighting Catholics? Because there was no Christendom in Muhammad's time, there was only Catholics. There was no Seventh-day Adventists or Jehovah's Witnesses or Pentecostals. Those type of denominations didn't even exist. So they don't even have a legit argument for them. They only have a legit argument for people to say 3 gods in one, that's all. While they're saying, Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 3 gods in one. At the same time, that's how confused they are in the world. You know what I'm saying? So they got their Egypt eased in. And by the way, in Shrinendom, they do know about Egypt. They just don't know the truth about it. They don't know about the families and social, all that. They just got a basic fundamental doctrine about the power of Osiris, the god of the sky, came to the earth. They get a rudimentary, especially through the royal art, a lot of the symbolism of the royal art is done with Egyptian hieroglyphs. They don't know the language, they don't know the culture, they don't know. But this day and time has come for them to know again. They chose it. They don't want it and we don't care. But it's really Arab shrine. You can't be an Arabic shrine. You hear me? You can't be an Arabic shrine. Because Arabic is the language. The problem came in is because they couldn't speak the language. The 4 men responsible who said they had the knowledge to translate from manuscripts couldn't speak Arabic because none of them were Arabs. One was a Persian, one was an Italian, one was an American. None of them speak Arabic. And they're the ones who translate the manuscript, so they'll say the noble mystic Arabic. Arabiya. But when you say the word in Arabic, Arab and Arabiya comes out sound the same. I'm Arabi. I'm an Arab. I أتكلم عربي. I speak Arabic. You know how it sounds? I'm Arabi. See, I am an Arab. أنا أتكلم عربي. I speak Arabic. Arabi, Arabiya. Unless you know the language, you won't hear the difference. Like bear and bear. You know what I mean? When I first learned English, bear and bear was beat the heck out of me. Why couldn't I spell bear, B-E-E-R? Why did I spell B-E-A-R? It's phonetically, I couldn't hear that there's actually a twist in the word. I couldn't hear it. I hear it faintly now. Same thing. So now you have these people who stand there and put Arabic up there, for example. You got tricked. And that's a sign from God that you were tricked. That very first mistake. If you don't acknowledge the very first mistake, we can't get to the second. You understand? We can't even get to the second if you don't even look at the first one to see where you went wrong. And if you're not interested, then you go on and finish playing because there's a whole bunch of five. I guess everybody here who was ever in the Nation of Islam, raise your hand. Alright, Now, if you was ever in the Nation of Islam, then you know there's what was called the 5%ers in the Nation of Islam. But then a splinter group broke off in Holland under a guy called Clarence 13X and formed the 5%ers, right? And the real students enrolled in the Nation of Islam was highly insulted by this group of fanatics who were not following the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but followed a guy called Clarence 13X, a Putin who called himself Allah, and started cutting back on the bow tie. You can wear a beard, you don't wear this, you don't wear that. And he had this golden thing. The guys who are devoting their lives to the Nation of Islam and putting their life on the line had to be highly insulted by that. Right? Well, I ain't talking to a shrine who thinks he knows I'm insulted. Because I belong to the Sillah, or the Silsila of Rasulullah, the bloodline of Prophet Muhammad, as you all know who know me. And it's been in our blood as shriners all our lives. Right here today, I see my brothers being deluded by Flemings and a bunch of comedians. Some saying, you want to learn the truth of Shrine, come over here. If you want to still play the playback, then be 5%ers and run around Harlem and make like y'all know what you're talking about. But the day is going to come anyway. You follow?